Well, Grant, for some reason, we seem to have made it back to another season here on the Car Guy and Six Fan Show. For those of us, or for those of you who are joining us, this is our ninth season. I'm going to mute my
Yeah.
stream going on over there because we're getting some feedback. But for those of you guys who are joining us for the ninth season premiere of the Car Guy and Six Fan Show, my name is Jason. I am the old car guy, or the car guy of the Car Guy and Six Fan Show, and my partner over here.
Yeah, so we may be a little rusty, but I'm Grant Tommy. I'm straight Six Fan on YouTube. That makes me Six Fan of this little joint venture, the Car Guy and Six Fan Show. We do bounce back and forth between channels, but we are excited that the networks did not cancel us for a ninth season. But Jason, why don't you introduce our guest to the crowd?
Well, I'm going to let him introduce himself. Tim, go ahead and tell the folks who you are and where you're coming from.
Awesome. So my name's Tim Rogers. I'm co-founder of TMR Customs, and we're based in Newmarket, Ontario, Canada.
Excellent. So Canadians are attacking the Americans tonight.
I love the sounds of co-founder, because that means you can like continuously throw somebody under the bus all episode because they're not there to defend themselves.
Best part is it's my brother, so I can run over real nice.
Well, Jason, real quick, let's see who's jumped in the chat.
Yeah, so right out of the gate, we've had Ryan from Everything is Broken Garage. We've got one of our moderators, Joanne, and we've got John from the Get Out and Drive podcast. We've also got Uncle Squirrel, who's usually the first one in the chat. We've got Wheels, Kip from America to Bumper. Thanks, Kip, for joining us. Fox Can Fix It. And there's a few more joining in there. Ed Lakin, Dustin Sabo. Welcome, Dustin, for joining in. We've got a really exciting show tonight, but it wouldn't be possible if it wasn't for the help of the Get Out and Drive podcast, which we kind of classify ourselves as being powered by. So those who don't know who are joining us tonight, I am a co-host over on the Get Out and Drive podcast. John, Custom Car Nerd Meyer, is my co-host over there. And we got new episodes dropping all the time, so make sure you're tuned into the Get Out and Drive podcast and join us wherever you get your local podcast. Grant, why don't we jump into the first topic of conversation this evening?
Yeah, Tim, so I don't, fair warning, this might be a little bit of a downer question, but I think it's relevant to talk about since this is our first show of the new year. And unfortunately, 2023 started out with kind of some downer news. We have a great NASCAR frame builder, Ricky Townsend, passed away, and Ken Block, of course, our hobby, our niche, our whatever you want to call this motorsports world. We lost some great ones already, and I guess not necessarily to focus on their deaths and things like that, but it always, when someone like that's who's so influential and so inspiring passes in this passion we all love, it makes you often reflect on legacy and thinking about, oh man, where do I slot in this? And I just figure you, as an avid off-roader and fabricator, probably some of that resonated with you. So I guess just how did you react to the news coming right out of the gates here with those two?
It was pretty shocking. I mean, obviously you'd never see anything like that coming, but Ken Block touched on a lot of areas of motorsport, and I think inspired a lot of people in different genres. And I'm sure you've seen it. There's a clip where he's asked what you think your legacy is, and I think like the one thing I took from that was like, be nice, don't be a dick, have fun in life, be good to people. And yeah, I mean, I'm into off-road. You can tell by looking behind me, but I do appreciate anyone that's really got motorsports as a passion. It might not be my genre, but I feel like gearheads are all kind of one and the same, and you might be into different things, but you all kind of definitely share a common interest. And it was very, I mean, social media was obviously flooded with the passing of Ken Block, and it's like, wow, it's like there's a lot of people he inspired to do different things, and the dude was like insanely creative. And yeah, a couple of weeks like before that, we'd shipped one of our products, and we can get into it. It's like a fabrication tool. It's called the Machete Bender. We'd ship that down to Brian Scotto, like the co-founder of Hoonigan. So then to think like, oh, you got a personal connection with that guy, and his partner and good friend like that passed away. Like that's absolute terrible news. But yeah, hopefully people can just be inspired and think like you can kick ass. And yeah, I think the big things, be kind, don't be a dick. That's some really good, that's a good way to that's a good way to kick off 2023. If everyone can like carry that message forward, I think people would be good to each other and we'd be rocking.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. It doesn't matter which genre of popularity somebody is in, whether they're actors, singers, performers, race car drivers, whatever it happens to be. With today and social media the way it is, it brings them so much closer to their fan base. Better interaction with a Facebook post or Instagram, whatever it happens to be, YouTube. We were so lucky this year. We made it to SEMA, and we got to go to the SEMA opening breakfast. And Ken Block was there, and he did a little thing, and they kind of unveiled his opening burnout thing with the EV Audi that he did, and like just sitting there at that breakfast table in this big convention hall, and your jaw is literally on the table watching this happen and unfold in front of you. That was as close as I had ever come to Ken Block, and I wouldn't say that I was the type of guy that followed him by no means. But when you're in the automotive industry to any degree, you kind of know the name, what it's synonymous with, and you hit that right on the head. Be kind. And moving forward, I think if the world could do a little bit more of that with each other, regardless of sides of anything, we'd certainly be living in a much happier place. So, one of the things when it comes to contributions to what it is, like you said, it's everybody has something that they can pass down as a legacy, and I think that was it with Ken Block.
Sorry, Jason. I thought you were going to have a question to add at the
No. I do. I've got kind of the next question to move on to, but I mean, if you've got something to add to that, go ahead.
I was just taken by your long pause that you were waiting for me to ask a question. So again, we're rusty. So I'll just put the mic back on mute. And
Tim, did you have something else you wanted to add to that?
Yeah, I was going to say actually just one other thought. I mean, I thought a lot of people were familiar with Ken from DC Shoes. Obviously, he was co-founder there, and I met up with one of my cousins who was an avid skateboarder, and I said to him, I'm like, did you hear Ken Block passed away? And he said, no, I don't know who that is. And I'm like, it's a co-founder of DC Shoes, man. How do you not know that? And he's like, oh, I thought that was some other guys. And he got talking skateboarding and stuff. But then I realized, I'm like, everyone in my automotive circle knows who this guy is. So I'm like, his, let's call it like footprint at DC Shoes was probably relatively small compared to the amount of people he touched in automotive, which I thought that was cool. I was like, well, everyone in my circle knows him, but it's from automotive. It's not because the guy was the co-founder of a shoe brand. So I just thought, like, transformation wise, that's crazy, what he could do.
Yeah, for sure. And we'll kind of just end this little segment with a rest in peace, Ken Block. And you had a great contribution to the automotive segment. We hope that your legacy will live long and live on forever. So as we move into the next portion of the Car Guy Six Fan Show, one of the things that we want to do for 2023, or for season 9 at least, is we want to highlight manufacturers. There's a lot of different manufacturers that Grant and I have dealt with over the past several years, and we want to reach out to them. I reached out to Tim, and he was gracious enough to be our first guest for season 9. To talk about them and their product and what they're doing in the industry, whether it's be racing, whether it be customs, whether it be whatever it happens to be. Tim, take us through a little bit of who you are, and you said it's a co-founder, you and your brother, who you are and what it is that you guys are doing in the automotive industry.
Sure thing. So my brother and I started TMR Customs in 2008. And we design, manufacture, and resell primarily aftermarket automotive parts for off-road race trucks and like hardcore rock crawling, rock race applications. And from that, we've also spun that into a line of tools, fabrication tools, tool organizers, and we're branching out into that. And one thing we're big on that I was trying stress or get across to people is like, we're enthusiasts. Like, we're 100% in this. You can see behind me, we're kind of over at our project shop here, and we're always learning what works on our own builds. And then that filters down the pipe to the products, obviously, we make and offer to the end consumer. We also work with some top race teams as well in our field, and they prototype parts for us as well. And then racing as a whole, as a genre, if I can take a part off that race truck and say it's going to last a season of racing, it's going to last years on the Jeep behind us, right? So it's really just proving it out. And I try and stress that we're an enthusiast brand and we use the products. I mean, we're not a machine shop and, hey, off-road guys spend money on their trucks. Let's make some off-road widgets and not know how this product work. We're 100%. We live to get out in the dirt and rocks and have fun using our stuff and test it.
So yeah, that R&D is firsthand experience. It's everything that if it's not strong enough, you're going to make it better for your own needs. And so let's talk, when you say race truck, let's talk about that. So like behind you, we're combining like the spirit of a pre-runner with the heart and soul of a rock bouncer. And we're trying to make a reliable machine that can withstand all of that punishment and come back for more. So tell us a little bit about, when you say race truck, what are you talking about?
Sure. Yeah. Great question. So most people know this style of race truck as an Ultra 4. If you're familiar with King of the Hammers, that's kind of the pinnacle or Super Bowl of our sport. And we host our own off-road racing series here in Ontario, just so our customers have somewhere that are local to play. But our trucks are everywhere. Like, so behind me, that's a tube chassis kit we manufacture. So every tube's laser cut, coped, notched, part numbered. We send it to you on a pallet, and it's literally Lego for an adult, or like it's Lego for adults. And if you can weld, you can put together that chassis. So we give you an assembly manual, you put it together, and then obviously we sell all the additional parts to bring it along. So shock mounts, link mounts, rod ends, body panels, you name it. And the chassis are everywhere. We sold them to Austria, Germany, all over the United States and Canada. And yeah, I mean, this sport, yeah, I mean, you touched on it for sure. It's kind of a mix of go fast racing, like call it some Baja style. Then we'd get into like that across of that rock bouncing, rock crawling. So these trucks, we want to be able to do north of 100 miles an hour, but also crawl over rocks the size of Volkswagens, right? So they're kind of, a lot of people dub it like the Swiss Army knife of off-road. We're asking them to do a lot. So it's really cool to see how you can package that and essentially invent what you think is the best platform and best way to go about it. So it's, and yeah, in terms of product testing, it's phenomenal way to go about it.
So you guys are in a pretty big facility now. Like, where did you start? How did TMR kind of come to? Was it in a garage like Apple, or was it like, is it just something that kind of came to your mind? What happened there?
Yeah, wicked question. So we started. My brother and I were both machinists by trade, and the company we worked for, as long as we put in, like, we were working a lot of overtime back then, but as long as you put in your 60 hours, you could stay after those hours and use the machines. So we had manual mill, manual lathe. I bought a welder. I could bring it into the shop. I bought a tube bender. I could bring it into the shop. It gave us kind of a clean space to work. So we were making stuff for our own Jeeps and our own trucks, and off-road's like massive communities. So if you go out on a trail ride and someone sees what they think is a cool widget on your Jeep, and they're going to say, where'd you get that widget? I made that widget. Would you make me that widget? Well, hell yeah, I'll work some more hours and make you that widget. So it just kind of spawned from there, and we're making more and more and more of it, obviously after hours and weekends and stuff. And then in 2008, when the economy crashed, we both lost our jobs on Christmas Day. The shop manager contacted us and said, come the following day, pick up your tools, shop's closed. Like, we were a tier 3 automotive supplier. So everything obviously kind of shuttered in the automotive field. And we just took that as kind of the opportunity to go full send and fully launch into this. I mean, it's my brother and I were both just like, I don't want this to happen again. We want to take control of our own destiny. So from that point, we set up kind of like a small little warehouse, we'll call it, and design lab in our parents' basement. Took over, my dad's had a small workshop. We put little racks in there, and we throw our laser cut machine parts on there. And then a buddy had a garage that was big enough we could put his welder in the garage, and we could weld some stuff up there. And then that just spawned into getting like our first facility, and then we've kind of moved on from there. But yeah, if someone asked where'd you start, I'd say mom's basement, like straight up my parents' basement. That's it.
So that origin story is the starts with the widget, kind of combines with somebody else making a career change decision for you almost. So I guess my next question is kind of what was the, for lack of a better term, gateway drug, or I guess flagship product? What was the one that kind of started it all, that first widget?
It was, I wouldn't say it was one product per se, because, and something we still pride ourselves on to this day is we really value customer feedback. So we think we're really in tune with the market. And one thing I've always thought is, if one person tells you they need a widget, there's probably 10 more out there that want the same widget. They're just not expressing it, right? So I can remember when we first started, we started with universal brackets, tabs, and weld on and builder parts. And we would just ask people like, what are you looking for? And they'd tell you, or sometimes they make a napkin sketch and, okay, we're going to model that. We're going to cut it. We're going to inventory it, put it on our website and sell it. And I remember kind of early on, one thing that was like big was we sponsored this local rock crawling forum. And I can remember as soon as we sponsored that forum, like first day that we had, and I mean, we're talking forums, we're talking way pre social media. And I wish they would come back, because forums are, in my opinion, king shit for knowledge share of automotive stuff. But as soon as we put a banner ad up on that forum, I remember we got contacted that night. I was at college doing like an extra CNC class after night, and we got contacted and someone wanted to buy something. And that was kind of a light bulb moment in terms of, okay, the internet this is where we're going to find these people, right? You're going to connect with these people online. And that's really the platform for selling and trying to reach the masses.
I gotta keep remembering to hit that mute button when I want to talk, I guess. So Newmarket, Ontario, for those of you guys who don't know, is it doesn't sound like it's much of a place to go rock crawling or off-roading. I would assume that you've got to travel a fair distance to get to any of those venues. Is there a common place in Southern Ontario that kind of attracts this type of enthusiast to the rock crawling and stuff?
Yeah, 100%. I'll throw out some town names. Some like people in Southern Ontario will know them, but like Bob Cajun, Minden, Bracebridge, Perry Sound, those are kind of the hot spots for off-road and rock crawling. And they're all, let's call it, within 2 to 3 hours of Toronto. So not massively far. I mean, if you want to make a getaway and go camping for the weekend and off-road and enjoy the outdoors, those are kind of the spots to do it. So yeah, we always kind of had stuff within 2 hours of our shop here. We're more close to the city, obviously, but yeah, you can take a 2-hour drive and you're on like quite a network of trails where you can have a lot of fun and test stuff out and meet other people.
And we kind of talked a little bit backstage, and before I made a fool of myself, I almost tried to compare what you're doing there to overlanding, and apparently overlanding is not what you do. You guys are specifically racing. So when you go out to these places, Perry Sound and all these different places to take your off-road rigs, you're not driving these things down the 400. You guys are hitting trailers. You're trailing them wherever you're going. They're off-road only. So you're doing some pretty serious off-roading and not overlanding.
For sure. I mean, overlanding is a different niche. I would say I might have a rooftop tent bolted on that thing if I was into overlanding, and instead of a 32-gallon fuel cell in the back, maybe I've got like a camp stove that slides out or something. And not to dismiss it, it's a massive market and a lot of people have fun doing it. It's just not a market we touch because most of those are parts that are vehicle and application specific and bolt on, whereas our parts are for total DIY crowd. Like you have a Jeep or an old Toyota or a truck and you're like, I need to put a 1-ton axle under that to run a 42-inch tire. And yeah, you're right. I'm going to throw it on a trailer, tow it to the trail, because the odds of me breaking something are substantial. And I want to push the truck to its limits in terms of off-road. So I don't want to rely on that thing to get me to work Monday. It's kind of, I'm going to build an off-road purpose-built toy.
Well, Tim, when you mentioned forums in 2008, I suspect we're probably similar in age, but just my interest in automotive stuff, it has always usually bounced around between trail rigs and street rods and pro touring muscle cars, and in different like percentages. But I've been on a number of forums, and I won't mention this other company's name because they're probably a competitor, and I don't want to do that to you. But there was they produced, they would produce like leaf spring eyelets and D-rings and all those kinds of like mounting tabs, things like that. And then years later, I started kind of getting to the rat rod scene, and some people found going to a place like these off-road parts manufacturers are like a sweet spot for them. They could, Heim joints and just various things that are super beneficial for them. So I guess my question is, have you found any like odd spin-off market for yourself that surprised you? You're like, oh, well, I guess we're really popular over here, and we would have never guessed that when you started.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the stuff like you're saying, it can apply to all kinds of different markets. If people are into modifying their vehicles, chopping stuff on it, welding stuff onto it, then those are people. We've probably got a bracket tab, a rod end, a bushing, like it's universal parts, right? So it's literally whatever you can craft in your head and put these parts to work. I would say in terms of a market, no. Like, I mean, we know the off-road stuff the best, so that's where I'm most familiar with where our parts are being used. But I know I've got hot rod, rat rod, chopper customers, especially on the tool side of things. Like, we've always manufactured like dimple dies, the tubing bender and flat bar benders and stuff are new to us. So I know those go to people fabricating anything, right? I got one guy that bought one and he was going to make like hooks to hang his wife's garden baskets. Like, that stuff can kind of touch everywhere. But in terms of a market, something that's pretty cool is we actually have a pretty good following in Japan for some of our Jeep specific products. And I think that's pretty rad. They're always tagging us on Instagram and showing off like a lot of our steering components and stuff on their Jeeps, which I always think is pretty neat to see.
And Tim, you are the resident Instagram guy, I guess, are you not? You're the guy who's kind of doing the posting, the answering the questions and all this stuff. Do you have much of a background in that, or is it just something that you've kind of picked up and grown over the years?
No, so I originally went to school for graphic design before I went to school for machining. So I think I've got hopefully I've got an eye for some photography, design, and creative elements like that. So yeah, I handle all that stuff in terms of the posts, answering the questions. One of my colleagues, Adrian, handles a lot of the questions and stuff on Facebook because sometimes the volume's just, I mean, there's only so much in a time in the day to answer all the social stuff. On top of email and whatnot. But I handle all the posts and create the video content. We do a lot around our shop here because obviously we're always building stuff. This is Thursday night. My brother and I work every Thursday night. We usually work till 1 a.m., 2 a.m. And this is kind of our time to get away from the main shop, get over here to what we call our race prep shop and be creative, work on these trucks and it's just kind of downtime. So you can get a lot of content from that because we're actually using the stuff.
Well, sounds like we really shut up your favorites list then if we took away from Thursday night shop time. So, boy, do we feel awesome right now.
No, you know what? In all fairness, before we came here, we were just cleaning up. We've been over at our other shop for too many years, and you obviously accumulate things over years, and we needed some more space. So him and I were just de-junking a couple rooms. So it was nice to say, "Well, I'll see you later, Mike. I got I got a task," and no, so I do not mind coming over here to get away from a few minutes of that for sure.
So then that probably explains it. TMR is Tim, Mike, and Rogers. I'm
Rogers.
guessing.
Yep. You named it. You got it. Yep.
Well, as far as TMR goes, I'm sure there's many products you're proud of, but I know there's a couple we wanted to maybe highlight tonight. So why don't you take a moment and kind of show the group, like, you know, we've thrown around some jargon here, Heim joints, like this, that, the other. But sometimes some people who aren't as dialed into the off-roading portion, unless you see it, it's kind of hard to like wrap your head around. So what do you want to show tonight?
For sure. So I've got a couple, being that we're over at our shop, I've got a couple fabrication tools here. Bear with me a sec. I'll pick these big beasts up. So this one here is a tube notcher that we manufacture. It's branded the Grizzly tube notcher. It also notch flat bar, you name it. Basically, if you can hold it in our clamp system here. I don't know why you can see this thing. You can hold it in our clamp system there. It's a simple hole saw notcher. So you attach a drill to that arbor there, and you run that drill and feed it through your tubing, flat bar, or whatever, and you're going to cope it. So if you're building a roll cage tube chassis, this is the ticket. This is what you want. It just clamps nicely in a vise, and then you bring your tubing to it. So it's super portable. One pretty cool feature with that guy is you can actually clamp it to a chassis. So like on these race trucks, we wreck them. You crash them, you roll them over. Tubes get bent, things get broken. So sometimes you got to make repairs. Last year we had a roof tube that was somewhat flattened in after like 2 crashes. So we could actually clamp that notcher to the chassis, which is crazy. And then we could cope it out to replace and weld in and splice in a new tube, which is pretty cool. So yeah, that's the Grizzly tube notcher. We manufacture that guy, design it in-house, manufacture it in-house. We've got our own CNC shop. We take a ton of pride in the stuff we make. And being that machining is our background, we think like we're the perfect people to design and manufacture a cutting tool like that. I see a lot on the market and they're flimsy. They're made of thin materials. They deflect and you get chatter and you don't get good cutting results. So our big thing is, if you've ever ran a manual mill lathe, like you want minimal tools stick out, you want rigidity. That's what makes a good cutting tool and gives you good results, makes your cutter last long, gets you quality cuts. So yeah, we're big on that. That notcher is like a really rigid and well-built unit. And then another one I brought is new. It's half of it here, but this guy's called the Pitbull, and this here is the rotating plate. So you can see it's got a series of holes in it there. And on this end, it's just a flat plate. I've got a vise clamp to it. A vise is the most common, but you could attach a belt sander to it. You could bolt that tubing notcher to it. And what that does is this plate here slides into a receiver, which we manufacture as well. It looks essentially like the receiver on your truck. You could actually slide that into a hitch receiver. Now you've got a vise on your truck, which is super handy if you're out remote, like we're going down to a race in California in a few weeks to help some guys pit. And yeah, we want some field serviceability, right? We don't have a full tool car with us. We've got what we can fit in a pickup truck. So we'll bring that along. And now we've got a vise on site at the race if we got to make repairs to a shock absorber, that sort of thing. And one cool feature with that hole pattern I showed you, you can clock that thing. So you can work with the vise flat. So obviously you can, like say you got to cut a tube or grind, you can tip it 45, you can tip it 90, you can go 45 the other way, you can go right around. So it's a rotating vise essentially. So it just gives you more angles to work on your workpiece, and it works out pretty trick. So those are brand new. They're on our site. They sold out way faster than we expected. So we're rocking through more of those right now. I know my brother's cleaning up some ones that were welded earlier today. That's kind of our night task to work on some of those.
Well, and I know that you guys do a lot of neat kind of, I don't want to use the term one-off because I'm sure there's people that make this stuff, but there's a lot of neat things that I've seen on your website that I'm thinking, I probably should have one of those because I'm always like, you've got this little bracket that you make to hold grinders.
Yep.
Right? Like,
yep.
How many people have a cutoff disc or a die grinder or something like that you just need a place to put it instead of throwing it in a drawer somewhere? Like, I'm going to try and pull up a screen share here in a second. We'll show you some of this stuff. And you've got real rugged jack stand holders that fit a variety of different jack stands. They come, I guess the ones that I got were just plain. I painted them myself. They get your logo kind of stamped into them or I guess laser out CNC machine, like all these different things that you guys offer. And I can only assume it's because somebody somewhere, probably you or Mike, said, you know what, we need something like this at our shop. How many other guys need something like this in the shop? Tell us about some of those items that you guys have developed, and I'm going to try and pull some of those up on the screen here.
Okay, cool. So yeah, I mean, you touched on the jack stand rack. Where that came from was our jack stands. We always had them kind of buried under a bench, and they're a clusterfuck. You might have a bucket of scrap metal in front of them, whatever. If that stuff's hidden, you're less likely to use it. Now you might jack up the corner of a vehicle and think you're okay to crawl under there, and it's safe. Yeah, just go tools and then scroll down to tool organizers. They would come up. But we thought there's always unused space in a shop, whether that be beside your garage door, whether that be under a staircase, in a corner by a cabinet. If you can make use of that space, hang the jack stands on a wall, now you're more likely to get them out and work safe. There you can see that pit bull, that rotating GIF there. There it is. And yeah, so the jack stand ones were one. And then the grinders, that was a huge issue for us. So we've got a very small welding bay and welding cell at our main TMR shop. And it would always annoy me when you see tools left out because the tool doesn't really have a home. So now we've got a big welding bench that you could have all this stuff on. You could have all this space. Half of it's tied up by tools. You've got two grinders sitting there. You've got air tools sitting there. You've got your hammer sitting there. So we thought, get these things off the table, up onto the wall. Now they've got a home. Now you've got more space to work, and obviously you're clean and efficient. And we put them all up, obviously, over here at our race shop, and it's insane. At the end of the night, it's like boom, boom, boom. Click the tools back on the wall, get them out of the way. And then the best part is when you come into work the following time on your projects, you know where the stuff is. You're not wasting time hunting it down. All the stuff's now got a home, as opposed to, yeah, maybe buried under a bench, in a drawer, in a cabinet. It just makes your work flow and workspace far more efficient, in our opinion.
Tim, just looking at the product page, as someone who, as an architect, uses 3D modeling software for a living, I'm guessing is this SolidWorks? Is that what I'm seeing here?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So, how much time do you spend then, like in product development? Or no, that's a bad question. I mean, how much time do you probably spend if you're breaking down your year in a program like SolidWorks versus maybe like programming a machine or fabricating things by hand? What's kind of that breakdown for you?
Yeah, so Mike does all our part design and modeling. So him and we start with a napkin sketch. I mean, we'll kick around ideas, and it's like, what's the problem we got to solve? Like Jason said, it's like all our stuff. Yeah, it solves either problems in your shop or problems on your build. It's all stuff we've experienced. So I would say, we never spend enough, right? It's always like you got 100 ideas. Okay, well, we got to funnel this down to like 10, funnel it down to 5. How many can we actually make? Because yeah, we are a busy production shop, so Mike often gets bogged down in the CNC side of things and the job scheduling, right? Making sure you've got all the tools ordered for the next job, you've got the material ordered, the material's cut, it's ready to hit the machine. So the product design and development, I'd love it if it could be one of our full-time jobs, and that'll happen over time as we kind of grow our team and build that out. Because yeah, I mean, like I say, we've got 100 ideas. It's just you can't get them all out in a year. So you got to pick away at the ones you think are the best fit. But yeah, there's definitely opportunity for us to spend full time on product development. No question. That's definitely something we want to pursue and grow into that role.
So what are some of the things that you look forward to? Like right now, you guys are just in the shop, you're cleaning up, you're working away on your own stuff or on projects or whatever. What is it that you think that you see TMR doing tomorrow in the future? What are some of the things that you might be able to talk about that say, here's something that we've been trying to develop or something that we've developed that we're getting ready to send to market? I don't know. Maybe there's something you can tell us that is big for TMR.
Yeah. For sure. So today, and this is something, again, this is just off customer feedback of our tool organizers. Guys were asking us for a pry bar rack, which I totally get, because I know my pry bars, I don't know if you can see that. Yeah, that snap on behind me. They're tying up a drawer in the bottom, and it's one of the bigger drawers because the pry bars are long. They're too big for the drawer. Now they're sitting in there at an angle. There's 6 or 8 of them jacking up a whole drawer in that box, right? I can use that space better for other stuff. So the pry bar holder's coming out. I saw Mike had that drawn up. And another one, same deal. People are like, you need this. So again, I would say, hey, one's telling you, 10 want it. So let's do this. So screwdriver rack, super simple, but again, it'll just get them all up on the wall and easily identifiable. I can tell you ours are an absolute shitstorm in that box. They're a mess. They're not organized, right? So get them up on the wall, be able to see them, and you're going to speed things up around the shop. And another one, and Mike remembered this back from our old machining days at the shop where we kind of first got started. So we would have been making these things like manually machining them back in probably like, I don't know, 02, 03. They're tap handles. So, everyone's got like a T-tap handle. And then you've got your set of taps. We used to make little aluminum or steel handles, and they would permanently live on each tap. So you'd have one for a 1032, a quarter, 5/16, 3/8, and so on. And then we would put a little label on that. But it was just ready to go. And we'd probably make a little rack that held them all. So you could have that on your workbench, on the wall, whatever. But that tap's ready to go. There's no messing around to find the tap handle you lost. Because I mean, who would put a tool away when you're done with it, right? So I mean, that tap handle's gone. Now you can't tap a hole, and you just want to get this job done quickly. So if you can go to your box, bench, or the wall and actually find, here's my set of taps, and they've all got a proper home and they're labeled. That's something Mike said, hey, we should really make those. Those are handy for us, going way back. So he's like, why don't we make those for our shop? And then yeah, if it's solving a problem for us, then yeah, I bet you other people got the same problem, or we can introduce them to a solution for a problem maybe they haven't realized is a pain in the ass yet for them.
So as the guy who's outnumbered tonight 2-1, I should probably throw the disclaimer out at the end of this. Might be a dumb American question or misinformed American question. But sidestep that for a second, and I'll say when my wife and I travel, like we love when we've traveled many places internationally, like Australia is one that comes to mind. Like we love to immerse ourselves in like, okay, whatever that country does well, we want to go see it. And I remember being extremely disappointed to like, man, Australia really doesn't make much. Like the best I could come up with was like UGG boots. And it's like, yeah, I'm not going to drive to the middle of Australia to go see, So what I'm getting at ultimately is like, I can't imagine there's a ton of off-road racing fabrication like at the scale you guys are in Canada. And I guess I gotta assume you take a lot of pride in being able to fill that in Canada, to be a Canadian company and do what you do. How hard was it to 2008 to now? That's 15 years. Like how hard was it in the early years to get to this point?
I mean, we're a niche of a niche, right? If you consider off-road vehicles and Jeeps, that's a niche. But then you want to drill that down to say probably the 2% of those guys that cut them up, put big axles under them and take them just off road. So I would say like we're a niche of a niche. So when you start out, you're looking for obviously local support and local business to kind of fuel you and get you started, because those are the people you can connect with the fastest. So when we started out and we opened our first shop, we were doing like a third walk into a showroom, third telephone orders, and a third online. But for us, we realized to reach the masses, that's the US, 10 times the population, and I'll say 10 times the gearheads within that subset, right? So we realized like you got to reach them on the internet. So we did lots of trade shows in the States so you can meet people, connect face to face, get feedback, and then then you got to connect with those people online and sell it e-commerce wise. So we've been able to scale through that. And I always think, I'm like, it's cool because I'm like, we couldn't have got to this size pre-internet. Absolutely no way. We would have had to be into a different market, manufacture parts for something else. Who knows what it could have been, but we could not have the business we have if you want to go back in time pre-internet. Absolutely, we wouldn't exist. There's no question about that. So it is cool. We can ship parts to every continent, and you can reach all these people. And if you make a good product and you stand behind it, people know you back it, and obviously they trust in you and buy into your brand. You can be located anywhere. People still take pride in what you manufacture.
Well, I think you hit that nail right on the head too when you talk about, the U.S. market is 10 times the population. Therefore, the scale is that, if that's where 10 times the population is, and 10 times the gearheads, and 10 times the rock crawlers, or racing guys, or whatever they are, you target that market. Just because you're in Canada doesn't necessarily you're targeting the Canadian market. Obviously, it's great because the shipping's probably a little bit cheaper. But as you go and you target where those people are, then without, like you said before, without the internet, it's very difficult to find out who these people are that you need to target, let alone have yourself accessible to them. So before, we were swiping through the JC Whitney catalog or the Summit catalog or Jegs or whoever, looking for whatever we wanted. And if it wasn't in that catalog, it didn't exist. And then when the internet came along, it brought everybody so much closer together, not just people, but products. So I think that the fact that you guys have come to grips with the fact you gotta look at where your target audience is and kind of focus on that. Is there something that you guys are offering in racing that is unique to the racing industry as TMR Customs?
That's a really good question. We like competition's heavy, especially in this race market, and a lot of racers like making their own stuff. They've got their own ideas. There's a big subset of that thinks like, I can't run the same chassis that you race. I won't beat you in that. You know your chassis better than mine. You know those parts better than me. So there's definitely a subset of people that push the design element and they want to do it themselves. But then there's a big group of people that like buy into a proven platform, like our chassis kit. We've sold over 50 of them. And like I say, they're everywhere. And we're redesigning it, and we're redesigning it based on racer feedback. And that's strictly guys that have our cars that have been racing them for years, wrecking them for years, and being like, here's how we go faster. I've learned this, right? And these are improvements we can make. We need bigger rear suspension travel. The chassis needs more room in this area, so I'm comfortable. We need bigger fuel cell. We need better access to the spare tire. So that's all stuff we've learned, and then we're gonna roll that out, and that'll be a new product development, which is pretty cool.
Tim, to kind of go back to the fabrication side of things, I was listening to a recent podcast, and I'll only halfway promote them because the only podcast we do promote here is the Get Out and Drive podcast. So make sure you go to getoutandrive.com, subscribe to them wherever possible. But there's another good automotive podcast out there I just found. It's basically hosted by the Roadster Shop, but they were interviewing Jesse James. And they kind of got to the point in the conversation where it just kind of like, it was this eureka moment of well, and then I just learned Boyd Coddington actually employed Chip Foose and Jesse James at the same time. I didn't know that till this podcast, but they were talking about the early 2000s and what those two people did for inspiring like a whole generation of fabricators, between Jesse James and Chip Foose, between Monster Garage and Overhaul, and kind of hitting the airwaves at the same time. How much were you inspired by, or if not even that, like, where did your inspiration come from to get into this industry to begin with? Where did that passion for fabricating stuff for cars come from?
So in terms of Jeeps, my uncle had I can't remember the year, but he had an old CJ7, and this thing was like, it was rotten, and he gave it to my dad to drive for the winter because my dad wanted a 4-wheel drive for the winter. And I remember cruising with my dad, and I don't know how young I would have been, but I remember I could look down at the floorboards and see the road beneath us. I was like, "Your dad, like, I could see the ground." He's like, "Yeah, it's fine." And I remember it would snow. Roof's literally coming through on the soft top on this thing. And I'm like, "Dad, like, we're outside." And he's like, "No, it's sifting through the top." Like, this thing was hammered. But I just remember, like, that thing could go anywhere, like drive through any snowbank. We never got stuck. I'm sure we were just driving around town. But anyways, in my mind, that Jeep and off-road was always like freedom. Like, you can get anywhere, you can explore. So I got a Jeep as my first vehicle. And then in terms of making stuff, yeah, Monster Garage for sure. I think that kicked off like a lot of crazy ideas for people. And then the big one in this market was Extreme 4x4 with Ian Johnson, who's also Canadian. He was like 4 hours from us, and he was a shop teacher before he got into that. And yeah, those shows on Spike and Discovery and stuff, they were cool as hell. And they were on cable, so they were reaching like mass appeal and mass audiences, right? So yeah, I would definitely say Extreme 4x4 would have helped light a fire under us. It also, once we got into business, helped us launch some products. Like, Ian would show some of our stuff on there because he had a lot of free reign on that show. It wasn't total sponsor lockdown. Like, he had some free reign to use the parts he wanted and showcase brands he wanted and stuff, which was pretty cool. But yeah, definitely those shows. And yeah, if you think back to that time that those things were gaining in popularity, I think inspired like, yeah, a lot of people that think like, I can do that. Like, I remember thinking I want to weld up a steering box skid plate. That was the first thing I wanted to weld up, a steering box skid for my Jeep. And I'm like, I can buy a grinder, I can cut metal. And I'm like, I can buy a welder. So I bought a Miller welder, and this was pre-YouTube. I'm like, how am I going to learn how to weld? A forum. Like, where else? I would hit a Miller Welders forum, and you just read people talk about welding techniques and how they do it. And I'm like, okay, people ask, what are your settings, right? What are your settings, wire size? And then I'm like, hit the garage and try it, right? And I mean, with metalworking, one thing I appreciate about it is if you F it up, you just cut it off and redo it, right? Like, you F up a weld, grind it out, and redo it. Like, you've got the opportunity to always improve if you think what you're doing is not up to snuff. And you really just gotta try. And even to this day, like, I'll meet customers that are like, oh, I can't weld. It's like, well, you only can't weld because you haven't tried it. If you care, you can certainly learn it. And I'm like, YouTube's a way better resource than what I learned with. I learned from reading text, like a freaking forum taught me how to weld, right? Like, I don't know. So I think like, I hope people are inspired to just try stuff, and like YouTube opens it up to so many people. And obviously pros joke like, oh, you're YouTube certified, right? Like, YouTube certified mechanic. But I'm like, there's so much that can be learned, and ultimately just, I don't know, go try it. What do you got? You don't have anything to lose. Get out in your garage and try fabricating, because it's pretty cool. And I think anyone that cares and wants to learn it can certainly pick it up.
I mean, only the best minds in off-roading world definitely lived on pirate4x4.com. Those guys were always the best. They were, and always very cordial to the people.
A whole lot of middle fingers were thrown over there. But that forum was huge. Like, it for sure spawned a lot of this stuff. And I remember we became like a sponsor vendor on that forum because one of our local customers said, hey, you got to make this widget. It was a knuckle gusset kit. So like, there was a Ford Dana 60 that lots of guys used, and the knuckles were weak on it. They're prone to breaking. So he's like, you got to make a kit to beef this up. You got to take it to Pirate. That's where the people are at, and you're going to sell the hell out of them. So we're like, I remember being like scared, like, we're going to go on Pirate? Like, people there are mean. Like, we might get eaten. But I'm like, hey, you got to try it. And that product itself didn't like catapult to the moon by any means, but you get on there and yeah, I mean, you nailed it. Pirate was like king. It was king shit. There was a lot of learning on there, a lot of laughs, and like, yeah, I mean, it was crazy. I just browse that and read it and soak things up. It's funny. It was bought by a Canadian company. I don't know if I can name them. I mean, Vertical Scope. They were buying up forums at the time, and it kind of killed it. So like, then it was sad because I remember the jam on Pirate after that was like the Canadians ruined it. I'm like, maple syrup drinkers, they ruined it. They came here and ruined Pirate 4x4. But I think social media is really what ruined forums. Social media was just an easier platform to share pictures on, right? And then it turned into more of a look at me as opposed to like knowledge sharing and connecting with the community. So yeah, I think it's a shame the way things have gone, but it is what it is.
In the infamous words of South Park, blame Canada.
Yeah, blame. We were blamed.
So, guys, if you've got some questions, I see we've got one there from Will's Wheels, and we will get back to that. If you got questions for Tim, go ahead and throw them in the chat. We'll try and get some of those answered as well. We did talk, or you were talking a little bit about inspiration, and I want to kind of go back kind of internet, when internet wasn't so mainstream. And for me, it was Sunday mornings watching Dave Bowman and Sam Momolo on Shade Tree Mechanic, and just watching to see how those things, I'm not going to say those guys were inspirations, but to a degree they were, because you aspired to just parts replace and customize and work on things. And when those guys were in their heyday working out of a small little garage, I was a young teenager. As they grew up, they turned into Two Guys Garage, and different shows were kind of just making the rounds on Power Block TV and all that stuff. Is there somebody pre-internet or some buddies, a group of people that inspired you to keep going at it, to keep moving forward in doing what you're doing?
I would say Power Block on Spike, like I mentioned Ian earlier, but that was all shows that showed you whether it was fabrication, bodywork, paint. They showed you really all different elements of automotive. And then it's like, okay, well, if you want to know them all, cool, you can master them all. Or if you just are like, this is what turns my crank, I want to get into that. But I also respect the fact other people are craftsmen and professionals at what they do. So yeah, 100% Power Block on Spike. I remember waking up, and I would have been in high school, and you had to watch that. That was like, don't miss. And I mean, that's before PVR. If you missed it, you're done. Like, it's not like my kids now where they watch Netflix and it's like, I want this, I want that. And then if they watch cable TV for a minute, they get mad when there's a commercial. And I'm like, come on. I'm like, I had to wake up at a given time when I wanted to watch Extreme 4x4. And if I missed it, I missed it. It was over. So yeah, I would say Power Block. Yeah, the guys you mentioned, like Shade Tree, I remember my dad would watch that. My dad's like an automotive enthusiast, but not like a huge DIYer. But yeah, I thought that was cool. I think that inspired my brother to take automotive in shop class in high school and get more into it. So for sure, I think those shows spawned lots, and it'd be cool, I think, to see what future generations take from like the limitless content they can search on YouTube or search online. I think there's way more out there to consume than the 3 hours of Power Block on Sunday, right? So there's lots to be taken in.
So the thing you kind of forget about or lose sight for a moment with that initial Extreme 4x4 show, I mean, Jesse Combs was the other fabricator. I mean, the fabricating talent and just like all-time legends, like, I remember when that show first came out and you're just, okay, well, here's another one. Like, I don't know if it was after trucks or whatever, and it may have still been Hot Rod TV back then. I mean, they were kind of new to the scene, but like, man, looking back, like Ian and Jesse Combs together, like, we were lucky and we didn't even know it.
No, you had no idea. And yeah, it's like some of those other shows were like a little more, I'd say, like fluffed up by the sponsor side of things, whereas I feel like they were very legit. Like they wouldn't have recommended a product like that was junk, right? Like I feel you took enthusiasts and launched them into that. But yeah, you're right. You're consuming that content without realizing how good it was.
Okay, there you go. I was going to ask if you had the question.
Yeah, so Will's Wheels is just asking a question for you, Tim. Are you sponsoring any specific teams in the King of the Hammers, or just selling them a ton of parts?
Awesome question. So yeah, in terms of the most known name, that would be Paul Horschel. He's racing like a fully independent car at King of the Hammers. If you follow Ultra 4, you'll definitely know Paul. His car is bright orange, 1,000 horsepower Danzio motor. It's Rowdy. He's got some of our parts on there and our branding on the car. And Paul and his team, like they are extremely hardworking dudes, so they're fun to partner with. So that'd be the best known name. And then the most exciting for us is three of our. I'll never get the hang of this. Three of our chassis kits. Two of them are local guys. They're within like 4 hours of us. That's JP Morin and William McGibbon. They're a racing team called Greasy Clown Motorsports, but we've been racing with them and they've been customers and like they've become awesome friends for us. So yeah, we're going down there to help those guys pit. Myself, my brother, our friend Eugene from EH Media, and Steven, who's one of our employees and good friends. We're going to be set up at Remote Pit 1. So if you see the Greasy Clown cars, there's two of them. They got a very similar livery to our cars, TMR all over them. If you see them coming to Remote Pit 1, hopefully not for a spare tire change or anything broken. Hopefully they're just coming in for a splash of fuel and a high five. But yeah, that'll be us wrenching on their cars and supporting those guys down there as best we can to keep them on the racetrack and hopefully bringing home some results.
Greasy Clown. Did you say Greasy Clown?
I did. Greasy Clown Motorsports. They're Bill McGibbon. He's from Smiths Falls, which is actually Ian Johnson's hometown. So that's kind of a cool connection there.
Isn't that like a Ricky Bobby? Wasn't that one of the sponsors on his car earlier? Anyways, I'm off on a tangent. Any other questions did you find in there, Grant?
No, other than the Bandit was just kind of poking fun at how back in the day we had to learn how to program a VCR instead of DVR.
Yes, that was a more complicated process for sure.
Yeah. Well, Tim, I just wanted to again thank you for your time, especially on a Thursday night, as you explained, is the is Tim and Mike time. So we're sorry we cut into that, but we've really enjoyed the time and the conversation, and it's exciting to see what TMR has to offer. So I've loved every minute of this. Jason, I guess I'll just let you kind of clean things up.
Yeah, for sure. So Tim, again, as Grant said, it was great to have you on the show. It was great to take some time out of your personal time, not just taking it away from work. Some guys don't mind being taken away from work, but you guys this is kind of your fun time, your time to do your thing. So thank you for that. Any closing remarks? Any final pitches you want to do for TMR Customs to anybody that's watching this now or who may watch it after we go off air?
Sure. Yeah, I would just say, and it's something I kind of led with from the start, whether you're shopping with me, whether you're shopping for parts for your hot rod, rat rod, whatever, just try and buy from small business and support enthusiast brands. Don't buy from the big conglomerates, and there's tons of them out there, and they just look at automotive as a segment. Hey, we can dip into this and make some money off these guys. Buy from enthusiast brands because they're the people on the ground floor actually testing this stuff. They stand behind it too. Like if you have a problem with our parts, we take care of you. We have very few problems because we run and test our stuff and prove it out. But yeah, I'm big on support small business and support North American manufacturing. That's something I look to too. Where are these parts coming from? I mean, if they're coming from overseas, I don't know. Is that where you want to pour your hard-earned dollars, or do you want to support manufacturing in North America so we've still got some and support trades? And I hope there's like a new generation coming up of kids that know you can work with your hands and that's cool, and you can make good money and have fun and take a lot of pride in what you do, because I think that's kind of been skipped over by schools and stuff. So I hope kids get inspired, and hopefully they're inspired by online content they see and people kicking ass fabricating. So yeah, that's all I really hope for in the future.
Those are some great final words. And one of the things that we do push on the Get Out and Drive podcast, one of our big things is what drives youth. And it's about getting the youth back into the trades, whether it be, carpentry or plumbing or electrical. We like to see them get into the car trade because we want to see those body shops. We want to see those manufacturing. We want to see mechanics and all that type of stuff, custom work. We want to see kids getting back into the trades because a lot of those trades are just getting lost. Back in the 80s and 90s, it was pushing your kids to go to university and get that bachelor's degree, like we talked about earlier, and then all of a sudden, 20 years later, they're all got bachelor degrees, and some of them are in doing what they want, but some of them are just sitting around doing flipping burgers somewhere when they could be actually getting their hands dirty. So, it's great to see that you have that same frame of mind to get the youth back into doing what it is that that we love, that we aspire to do, and see them get their hands dirty once again and become more of these blue collar as opposed to white collar workers. It was a great episode. It was a great interview, Tim. I really appreciate it. Lots of great information, guys. Make sure you head on over to TMR Customs. Follow them on Instagram. There's lots going on over there. They're over on Facebook as well. And if you have an opportunity, go to their website, browse through some of that stuff, some of that tool organization. If you're not into, I almost said overland. Look at
No.
If you're into off-roading, racing, stuff like that, there's always something there that you guys can find. Like I said, the tool organization. If you're into, DIYing, there's lots of stuff that can help keep you organized. I hope you guys enjoyed this format of the Car Guy and Six Fan Show. It's what you're going to get moving forward in season 9. And we've changed the format a little bit. We're not every week anymore. It just tended to be a little bit much, doing 18 weeks straight, a little bit of a break, and then doing it all over again. So 12 episodes for 2023, and we're striking it for, we're targeting it for every third Thursday. So kind of mark it on your calendars. Car Guy Six Fan Show every third Thursday. Next week, it's on Grant's channel.
Next month.
Yeah, look at that. I'm doing it already. Next month, February, we'll be making sure we do some promo for that, so you guys don't forget. And we've got another guest lined up over there. So thanks for being a part of the Car Guy and Six Fan Show, powered by the Get Out and Drive podcast, guys. We will see you next time. I guess I'm the one that's going to hit that end.
Yeah, you do.
I'm waiting for someone else to do it. Join